Hello, everyone. Tonight, we're stepping into the quiet, mysterious world of plants, a place where leaves listen, roots explore, and trees just might be talking behind our backs. It's a slow-motion universe filled with light chemistry and clever little tricks that unfold one patient moment at a time. I hope this video isn't too interesting. Though if it does happen, to keep you awake, at least you'll be learning something fascinating in the process. Not the worst way to spend a sleepless night. Now, before you go and watch, please take a moment to like and subscribe to this video, but only if you truly enjoy what I do. And while you're settling in, I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Feel free to share it in the comments. It's always wonderful to see how far these quiet little journeys reach. So get cozy. Let your shoulders relax. Let your thoughts slow down like a time lapse of a sunflower, turning toward the morning light. And just a soft reminder before we begin. This video is for educational and relaxation purposes only. It's not intended as medical advice, a cure for insomnia, or a replacement for speaking kindly to your houseplants, though that last one is always encouraged. Let's begin. It's easy to think of plants as passive bystanders in the sensory world. They don't have eyes, ears, or noses, no fingers to touch, with no tongues to taste. But what if that's only because we're looking for our own senses in all the wrong places? While plants lack the organs we associate with perception, they've developed their own suite of sophisticated ways to gather information from the world around them. They can detect light gravity, touch temperature, moisture, and even sound. They can sense when they're being nibbled on, when their neighbors are nearby, and when the days are getting longer or shorter. In fact, plants may be some of the most observant organisms on Earth, just on a time scale and wavelength we're not used to noticing. They are masters of silent observation, of a kind of deep listening that doesn't require ears, and a form of seeing that doesn't depend on eyes. Let's begin with sight, or at least something quite like it. While plants don't have eyes, they are extremely good at detecting light, not just whether it's present, but how much there is, what angle it's coming from, how long it lasts, and even its color. This is thanks to a range of light-sensitive proteins that act like internal photoreceptors. One of the key players is a group of proteins called phytochromes. These molecules can detect red and far-red light, and they help plants determine the quality of the light they're receiving. Why is that useful? Well, when light passes through a canopy, the red wavelengths are absorbed by the upper leaves, while the far red wavelengths pass through. If a plant detects a higher ratio of far red light, it knows it's being shaded by other plants, and it responds by growing taller in a bid to reach the sunlight. This is why many young plants seem to stretch toward the light if they're in crowded conditions, a phenomenon known as shade avoidance. They're not just growing randomly. They're interpreting the quality of the light and making architectural decisions accordingly. Plants also use other photoreceptors like cryptochromes and phototropins to detect blue light, which helps regulate everything from seedling development to stomatal opening to leaf positioning. That's right. Leaves adjust themselves to optimize exposure to sunlight. In some species, they even track the movement of the sun across the sky in a process called heliotropism. Imagine a sunflower's face slowly turning east to west, following the golden arc of the sun. It's not just for dramatic effect. It's a very real solar tracking strategy to maximize photosynthesis. This silent vision is not just a simple reaction. It's a form of strategic awareness. Think of a tiny seedling emerging from the soil. It's not yet a tree, just a hopeful green whisper. Its first and most critical decision is where to grow. With no eyes to see, it uses its phytochromes to gauge the light quality above it. If it senses a high level of far red light, a signal that it is in the shade of a larger plant, it knows it must invest its energy not in strong roots or broad leaves, but in a long, spindly stem that will reach for the sun, desperately trying to climb out of the shadows. If it senses full, unobstructed light, it will grow a sturdier, more balanced form, confident in its access to energy. It's a risk assessment made without a brain, a choice between a sprint and a marathon, all based on a silent, light-filled conversation. This quiet decision-making process, a dance between light and biochemistry, is one of the most beautiful and overlooked aspects of plant life. A little-known fact is that this response to light quality is so sensitive that a plant can even sense when a shadow is merely approaching before it has even been cast. The presence of a neighbor is detected not by touch or sight, but by the subtle ghostly change in the light that falls upon it. Then there's the question of circadian rhythms. Just like humans and animals, plants have internal clocks that run on roughly 24-hour cycles. These circadian rhythms allow them to anticipate changes in the environment, such as sunrise and sunset, even when kept in total darkness. Plants continue to follow these rhythms for several days, suggesting that their sense of time is deeply ingrained. These internal clocks help regulate processes like leaf movement, flower opening, and hormone production. For example, some plants open their flowers at specific times of day to align with the activity patterns of their preferred pollinators. Others close their stomata at night to conserve water when photosynthesis isn't taking place. It's a quiet, invisible rhythm, but it governs much of a plant's daily life. For instance, the famous sleep movements of certain leaves, like those of a clover which fold up at night and unfurl in the morning, are not a direct response to light, but rather the visible manifestation of their internal clock. Scientists have long debated whether this behavior is an ancient memory of a time when the sun was their only clock, or a finely tuned adaptation to save energy. The answer, as is often the case in science, is probably a bit of both. Now let's talk about touch. While plants can't reach out and feel things the way we can, they're highly sensitive to physical contact. This ability is known as thigmotropism. You can see it in action when a vine wraps itself around a trellis, or when a tendril curls after brushing against a surface. The speed and direction of this movement vary depending on the species and the stimulus, but the underlying mechanism is the same. Mechanical stimulation triggers a cascade of biochemical signals that cause cells on one side of the structure to grow faster than the other, creating a bend. It's a physical response, yes, but it's rooted in a fundamental sense of feeling the world around them. For a long time, historians of botany believed that these reactions were just simple pre-programmed responses, nothing more. But recent studies on climbing plants, for instance, have shown that they can actually remember the location of a support after only a brief touch and will grow directly toward it even when the support is removed. This hints at a rudimentary form of memory, a physical impression left on the plant's system. It's a bit like a ghost of a touch, a memory of a fleeting contact that shapes future growth. This is not the kind of memory you and I have, no nostalgic feelings or reminiscences, but a functional biological record of a past event. A curious little fact, one you might not have known, is that some plants can even hear in a way. In controlled experiments, scientists have exposed plants to the sound of running water without any actual water present and found that roots grow toward the sound. This suggests that plants can detect vibrations and use them to guide their growth. The mechanism isn't fully understood. It likely involves tiny mechanoreceptor cells that respond to pressure or movement, but it hints at a level of sensory awareness we are only just beginning to grasp. It's a truly stunning idea. A plant listening for a distant stream, a silent symphony of life guiding its way. We often think of our world as a place of sound and fury. But for a plant, it is a world of subtle vibrations and quiet hums. They are sensitive to the gentle rustle of a passing insect, the deep rumble of an approaching storm, and the constant thrum of life in the soil. Another sense, less a sense than a state of being, is their perception of gravity. This is called gravitropism. Every plant knows which way is up and which way is down without fail. A seed, no matter how it falls, will send its root down into the earth and its shoot up towards the sun. It's a perfect, unwavering internal compass. Inside, the plant's specialized cells contain tiny, heavy starch grains called statoliths. As gravity pulls these grains to the bottom of the cells, they press against the cell membrane, triggering a signal that tells the plant which way to grow. When you turn a potted plant on its side within a few hours, you can observe the tip of its stem beginning to bend back upwards. The statoliths have shifted, the signal has been sent, and the plant has made its slow, deliberate correction. It is a constant, quiet conversation with the very force that holds our universe together. The elegance of this system, its simplicity and perfection, is a profound piece of cosmic poetry. A plant has no brain, no concept of up or down. Yet it knows with absolute certainty which direction to grow. Finally, consider a plant's sense of smell, its ability to detect and respond to airborne chemicals. A plant can smell danger. When a caterpillar takes a bite out of a leaf, the plant releases a specific set of volatile organic compounds, an SOS signal, into the air. This signal can do two things. It can travel to other parts of the same plant, prompting them to produce bitter or toxic chemicals to make their leaves less palatable. And it can also travel to neighboring plants, alerting them to the danger so they can prepare their own defenses. It is a silent alarm system, a network of whispers that passes through the air, warning a whole community of a predator's presence. In some species, this chemical signal is so specific that it can identify the type of attacker, allowing the neighboring plants to tailor their defenses accordingly. For instance, a tomato plant under attack from a caterpillar will emit a different chemical profile than one being chewed on by an aphid. It's a level of communication so nuanced, it's almost impossible for us to comprehend without a deep dive into the language of molecules. The idea that a plant can smell trouble and send out a warning that it can engage in a silent chemical conversation with its neighbors challenges our every notion of what it means to be aware. So you see, the sensory world of a plant is not one of bright colors and loud noises. It is a subtle, quiet, and deeply interconnected world of light touch, gravity, and chemical whispers. They are not passive. They are simply living on a different wavelength, a slower, more deliberate cadence. As you settle in, let your mind rest in this idea that even the simplest green leaf is a sophisticated marvel of sensing and knowing, a silent poet in the grand chaotic symphony of life. Let's allow your mind to drift away from the silent doors of perception. We'll dive a little deeper now, exploring the internal architecture of a plant, a magnificent structure built by light and nourished by the earth itself. If you could shrink yourself down, you would find yourself inside a complex, self-sustaining factory where every part is a masterpiece of evolution. Let's begin with the foundation. Hidden beneath the ground, away from all sight, are the silent heroes, the roots. They are not loud, nor do they seek attention, yet they are the origin of all life for the plant. Roots primarily perform two functions. They anchor the plant firmly in place, and they absorb the water and essential minerals from the soil like a tireless, ever-thirsty sponge. But if you think of roots as just simple absorbent threads, you're missing an entire world. Roots are born explorers. They have the remarkable ability to sense gravity, moisture gradients, and even physical barriers like a stubborn rock. They don't just absorb, they choose. They instinctively reach towards areas rich in nutrients and cleverly avoid barren or toxic zones. When a root encounters an obstacle, it doesn't stubbornly try to push through. Instead, it changes direction, branches out, and sends signals upward, informing the above-ground parts of what it has found. It's a sophisticated, decentralized nervous system buried in the earth. A single ancient oak or a slender birch can have a root system that extends far beyond its canopy, sometimes 2 or even 3 times wider than the tree is tall. That is a complex, sprawling, and responsive subterranean architecture. In fact, a lesser-known historical fact is that in many old-growth forests, the roots of neighboring trees of the same species can fuse together, forming what are known as natural grafts that allow them to share resources. Historians still debate whether this is a truly altruistic act or merely a survival strategy to ensure the stability of the entire community. But either way, it reveals a profound interconnectedness among individual plants. From the underground world, let your mind rise. Holding everything up is the stem, or more broadly, the shoot system. The stem acts as a kind of skeleton and a complex transportation network. It holds the leaves up to the light, ensuring they get the energy they need. It transports fluids and nutrients between the roots and leaves, acting as a biological elevator. And in many cases, it serves as a storage system, like the thick water-filled stems of cacti or the carbohydrate-rich stalks of sugarcane. Inside the stem, two main transport systems run like biological highways, the xylem and the phloem. The xylem is the one-way street, a specialized tissue that carries water and minerals upwards from the roots to the leaves. This remarkable process is powered by transpiration, where water evaporating from the leaves creates a vacuum that pulls more water up from below, almost like sipping through a straw made of living tissue. The phloem, on the other hand, is a more versatile two-way street. It transports sugars and other organic molecules created during photosynthesis down from the leaves to the rest of the plant. This is how the plant's postal service quietly shuttles energy to wherever it is needed most, whether to a growing tip, a storage organ, or to the busy roots below. And then there are the stars of the show, the leaves. These are masterpieces of natural engineering designed to capture sunlight, absorb carbon dioxide from the air, and produce glucose through the process of photosynthesis. Their flat, broad surfaces maximize exposure to the sun's rays, while tiny pores on their undersides, called stomata, allow gases to enter and exit in a tightly regulated exchange. These stomata can open and close depending on conditions like humidity and temperature, helping the plant conserve water while still breathing. It's a system so elegant, it's like a little air conditioner that also makes its own food. Inside, the leaf-tiny green organelles, called chloroplasts, work tirelessly. They contain chlorophyll, the pigment that gives plants their beautiful green color and, more importantly, captures energy from sunlight. With that captured sunlight, along with carbon dioxide and water, the chloroplasts perform photosynthesis, converting light energy into the chemical energy that powers the entire plant. And in a stroke of cosmic luck for the rest of us, they produce oxygen as a byproduct. We should probably send them a thank you note sometime, right? A delicious fun fact is that the first land plants, which appeared over 400 million years ago, had much simpler leaf-like structures. The complex venation patterns and stomata we see today are the result of hundreds of millions of years of gradual refinement, a slow-motion arms race between conserving water and capturing light. This architecture isn't static. Plants are capable of something called phenotypic plasticity, which is a fancy way of saying they can adjust their body form in response to their surroundings. A single species might grow tall and leggy in the shade to outcompete its neighbors, or it might grow short and bushy in full sun. These aren't conscious choices, of course, but they are a finely tuned feedback loop between the plant and its environment. It's the quiet conversation between a cell and a sunbeam. Some plants have evolved especially unusual body parts for specific purposes. Take tendrils, for instance, the thin spiral structures on climbing plants like peas or grapes. They act like little plant fingers wrapping around supports and helping the plant climb toward the light. Or consider the thorns on a rosebush or the spines of a cactus. These are modified leaves or stems that serve a defensive purpose, keeping hungry grazers at bay. A less-known oddity is the Venus flytrap. Its leaves are not just for photosynthesis. They are modified to act as a trap snapping shut to catch unsuspecting insects. This plant, which grows in nutrient-poor bogs, gets its nitrogen from a little crunchy snack, proving that plants and their body parts are far more resourceful than we give them credit for. Of course, no discussion of plant bodies would be complete without mentioning flowers. These reproductive structures are as practical as they are beautiful. Their petals, often brightly colored and aromatic, are designed to attract pollinators, bees, birds, bats, beetles, and even the occasional gust of wind. Inside, the flower pollen is produced and transferred to other plants to allow fertilization, which leads to the formation of seeds and fruit. Fruit, biologically speaking, is simply a mature ovary. But evolution has dressed it up in all sorts of appealing ways to encourage animals to help disperse seeds. From the sticky burrs that cling to your socks to the juicy berries we snack on, plants have developed countless strategies to send their next generation out into the world. Even within a single plant's lifetime, there's an immense amount of flexibility and subtlety in how its body develops. Many plants exhibit what's called indeterminate growth, meaning they can continue to grow as long as conditions allow, unlike animals whose body plans are largely fixed. After a certain age, plants keep building new structures, new leaves, new stems, new roots throughout their lives. And they do it all with a kind of quiet elegance. No nerves, no muscles, no central brain, just a network of cells communicating chemically and physically, adapting to the world with slow, deliberate changes. If you speed up time with a time-lapse camera, the full choreography becomes visible. You'd see leaves turning to follow the sun roots weaving through the earth, flowers opening with a slow-motion sigh. It's a silent symphony of motion, just played in a different key. So while a plant might not wag its tail or come when called, its body is constantly busy sensing, building, and balancing. It's an engineer's dream, a self-building solar-powered system that can filter air, anchor soil, make sugar out of sunlight, and create its own food without ever leaving the house. And perhaps most wonderfully, it does all of this without needing to be in a hurry. There's no rush, no panic, just a steady reaching for the sun, a slow stretching of cells, and a calm, quiet confidence in being exactly where it needs to be. Now that's a body worth appreciating. As you drift away from the architecture of a plant, let's turn our attention to its language. Plants don't speak with sounds, but they are masters of a far more ancient and subtle form of communication chemistry. They send messages to each other and to other organisms through a vast and complex network of molecules. If you could see this communication, it would look like a silent, invisible ballet of gases and liquids, a non-stop conversation happening just beyond our senses. This chemical messaging can be broken down into two main types, internal and external. Internally, a plant's body is a bustling hub of hormonal communication. These plant hormones, or phytohormones, are like tiny messengers, each with a specific task. They tell the plant when to grow, when to flower, when to drop its leaves, and when to prepare for a coming season. Think of them as the plant's project managers, quietly overseeing every aspect of its life. Take, for example, auxins. Produced in the growing tips of stems and roots, auxins tell the plant which way to grow. They move away from light, causing the shady side of a stem to elongate faster than the sunny side, making the plant bend toward the sun. This is the very mechanism behind the heliotropism we discussed earlier. It's a simple, elegant process. A hormone says, grow this way, and the plant obeys. Another key hormone is gibberellin, which plays a vital role in stem elongation and seed germination. Without it, many seeds would simply lie dormant, waiting for a signal that never comes. Gibberellin is the plant's personal alarm clock, telling it when it's time to wake up and start growing. A fun fact is that the first time this hormone was identified was in a fungus that made rice plants grow abnormally tall and spindly, a kind of botanical prank that led to a major scientific discovery. The discovery of gibberellin in the 1920s by Japanese scientist Eiichi Kurosawa was a landmark moment, opening up a whole new field of research into how plants regulate their own development. Then there are hormones like cytokinins, which primarily promote cell division and shoot growth, often working in a delicate balance with auxins to determine the plant's overall shape. A high ratio of cytokinins to auxins will lead to a bushy, multi-branched plant, while a low ratio will encourage a single tall stalk. It's a kind of constant internal negotiation over resource allocation, all managed by a handful of molecules. Another crucial phytohormone is ethylene, a simple gaseous compound that acts as a signal for fruit ripening and leaf senescence aging. This is why if you put a ripe banana in a paper bag with an unripe avocado, the avocado will ripen much faster. The banana is quietly whispering, "It's time," with ethylene gas, and the avocado is listening. This same gas is what allows deciduous trees to coordinate their leaf drop in the fall, a synchronized global event triggered by the collective chemical signals of the forest. The final two major players are abscisic acid, a stress hormone that signals when a plant needs to conserve water by closing its stomata, and jasmonic acid, which is central to a plant's defense against herbivores. But the most fascinating part of this chemical conversation happens externally when plants communicate with their neighbors and the world around them. This is where things get truly interesting. When a plant is attacked by a hungry insect, it doesn't just sit there. It screams, but with chemicals. It releases a cocktail of volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, into the air. This chemical cry serves multiple purposes. For a start, it can signal to other parts of the same plant that danger is present, prompting them to produce defensive compounds that make the leaves taste bitter or even toxic to the predator. But here's the most poetic part. That same signal can be picked up by nearby plants, alerting them to the threat. Imagine a field of sunflowers. A single plant on the edge is being nibbled by a beetle. It releases its chemical SOS, and the plants downwind, upon smelling this airborne distress call, can start to ramp up their own defenses before the beetle even reaches them. This is not a simple reflex. It's a form of collective security. The specific cocktail of VOCs released can even vary depending on the identity of the attacker. For instance, a tomato plant being nibbled by a caterpillar will produce a different chemical signature than one being attacked by a spider mite. This remarkable level of specificity is like a botanical version of a police sketch, allowing neighboring plants to prepare the right defense for the right enemy. This is where the ancient debate about plant cooperation comes in. Some academic scholars still argue whether this chemical warning is a form of altruism or simply an unavoidable leak of information. Is the plant trying to help its neighbors, or is it just a byproduct of its own defense mechanism? The truth is likely somewhere in the middle. From an evolutionary perspective, helping genetic relatives makes perfect sense. A plant is essentially helping to protect its family, increasing the chances that its shared genes will survive. But what about when it signals to a completely different species of plant nearby? That's where the mystery deepens. The fact that this communication occurs at all suggests a level of interconnectedness we are only now beginning to understand. It's a silent molecular economy of information. Beyond these simple warnings, plants use chemistry to interact with a staggering variety of other organisms. They use scent to attract pollinators. The beautiful fragrance of a rose is a carefully crafted chemical advertisement, a promise of nectar to any bee or butterfly passing by. The unique, sometimes unpleasant smell of certain flowers is tailored to attract specific pollinators, like the putrid odor of the corpse flower, which lures flies. This is a masterful evolutionary trick. Instead of wasting energy on bright colors that might not be visible in all conditions, the plant uses a powerful long-distance chemical signal to broadcast its location. Plants even use chemicals to repel things. You might have noticed that some plants, like mint or basil, have very strong smells. These scents are often repellents for common pests, a kind of invisible shield that keeps them safe. The chemicals in mint, for example, are a natural insecticide, a fact that has been exploited by humans for centuries. But the most profound chemical conversations happen below ground in the darkness of the soil. Plant roots excrete a vast array of compounds, and these compounds act as a form of liquid language. They can be used to attract beneficial microbes, like nitrogen-fixing bacteria, which a plant might invite to live in its roots. Or they can be used for more nefarious purposes. A classic example of this is a process known as allelopathy. Certain plants, like the black walnut tree, release toxic chemicals from their roots that inhibit the growth of other plant species nearby. It's a form of chemical warfare, a way of clearing the ground to reduce competition for resources. The juglone chemical released by black walnut roots is so potent that many common garden plants simply can't survive near a mature tree. It's a ruthless chemical-based strategy for survival, and it has shaped forest ecosystems for millennia. The ancient Romans, a civilization known for its practical knowledge of farming, were well aware of this effect, though they lacked the modern scientific understanding to explain it. They simply knew to avoid planting certain crops near a walnut tree. This world of chemical communication extends to something even more complex, the recognition of kin. Studies have shown that some plants, when grown in pots with their genetic relatives, behave less competitively. Their roots may grow in a more spaced-out manner, sharing the pot instead of competing fiercely for every inch of soil. However, when the same plant is grown next to a stranger, its roots will grow more aggressively, seeking to dominate the available space. How do they know who is who? They likely release specific chemical compounds from their roots that identify them as friend or foe. This isn't a conscious emotional recognition, but a primal chemical-based one. The existence of this behavior suggests a level of social awareness that challenges our traditional understanding of what it means to be a plant. Even more subtly, plants use chemistry to manage their relationships with herbivores. When a plant is attacked, it doesn't just release warning signals. It can also produce compounds that attract the predator of its predator. For example, some plants, when munched on by a caterpillar, will emit a specific scent that attracts parasitic wasps. The wasps, in turn, lay their eggs inside the caterpillar, effectively neutralizing the threat. It's a kind of silent chemical cry for help, a sophisticated invitation to a third party to come and solve the plant's problem. This is a detail so incredible, it sounds like a fantasy, yet it is happening every moment in fields and forests all around the world. So in the silent, unassuming world of plants, there is a constant stream of conversation. It is a language of molecules, a vocabulary of scents and tastes, a global network of chemical signals that govern everything from life and death to cooperation and conflict. The next time you walk through a forest or a garden, remember that you are in the middle of a bustling, invisible town filled with quiet shouts of warning, gentle offers of help, and strategic silent arguments. The plants may seem still, but their words carried on the wind and through the soil are in perpetual motion. It's a beautiful reminder that even in the absence of spoken language, the world is constantly communicating, and if we listen closely enough, we just might hear the quiet chemical poetry of a plant. As you settle deeper into the quiet world of plants, let's explore a concept that at first seems impossible: plant memory. How can an organism without a brain, without neurons, and without a central nervous system remember anything at all? We're not talking about a conscious memory, a nostalgic recollection of a sunny day, but a functional biological record of past events that shapes future behavior. It's a memory woven into the very fabric of their existence, stored not in brain cells, but in a cascade of chemical signals and genetic adjustments. It is a quiet physiological record of a life lived, a form of knowing that is both profound and utterly alien to our human experience. The idea that plants can remember is one of the most exciting and debated topics in modern botany. For centuries, the default assumption was that plants were entirely reactive, simply responding to stimuli in the moment without any carryover from one event to the next. But a series of clever experiments have begun to challenge this view, showing that plants can learn and adapt based on past experience. Perhaps the most famous example of this is the Mimosa pudica, or sensitive plant. If you gently touch one of its delicate leaves, it folds up almost instantly, a dramatic flinch that serves to deter predators. Scientists once believed this was a simple automatic reflex, but in a landmark study, researchers repeatedly dropped mimosa plants from a short height a harmless stimulus that mimicked a predator's touch without causing any real damage. At first, the plants folded their leaves in response to each drop, but after a few repetitions, they stopped reacting. They had learned that the drop was not a threat and stopped wasting energy on an unnecessary response. What's more, they retained this memory for several weeks, continuing to ignore the drops even when the researchers changed the conditions. This kind of habituation, a decrease in response to a repeated harmless stimulus, is a basic form of learning, and yet it occurred in an organism with no brain, no neurons, and no traditional memory centers. The plant didn't think about its decision. It simply adjusted its internal state, a physical memory of the event that allowed it to be more efficient. The energy saved from not folding its leaves could be used for growth or other vital processes, a small but significant gain in the slow, persistent game of survival. The memory isn't a picture or a thought, but a change in the plant's internal chemistry, a shift in its threshold for response. Another intriguing line of evidence comes from the realm of stress and adaptation. Plants that have experienced a period of drought, for instance, often become more resilient to future dry spells. When a plant is subjected to water stress, it produces specific proteins and hormones that help it conserve water and repair damaged cells. Even after the drought ends, some of these chemical and genetic changes remain, giving the plant a kind of drought memory. The next time it faces a dry period, it can activate these defense mechanisms faster and more effectively, thanks to its past experience. This isn't just a random evolutionary advantage. It's a form of physiological learning. The plant remembers the stress and prepares for its return. Academic scholars continue to debate the exact mechanisms, with some suggesting that this memory is stored in epigenetic changes, modifications, to the plant's DNA that don't alter the sequence itself, but change how its genes are expressed. This would mean that a plant's memory is quite literally a part of its genetic legacy, a record of its struggles and triumphs, passed down not just from generation to generation, but also from season to season within a single plant's lifetime. Think of it as a series of tiny flags attached to the plant's genes, telling them which ones to turn on and which ones to keep quiet in times of stress. These flags are set by past experience, a silent internal instruction manual for survival. This capacity for memory is also evident in how plants respond to insect attacks. You might recall from the last chapter how plants can release chemical signals to warn their neighbors of a predator. But a single plant can also remember a past attack. If a caterpillar has nibbled on a leaf, the plant's entire system is primed for future threats. The next time it's attacked, it will produce defensive toxins more quickly and in higher concentrations. This is a form of priming a biological readiness that is a direct result of a past event. It's as if the first attack left a lasting impression, a memory of a threat that makes the plant more vigilant in the future. The memory isn't a picture of the caterpillar in the plant's mind, but a biochemical state of heightened alert, a quiet physiological warning that lives on long after the danger has passed. A fascinating little-known fact that highlights this is how some plants attract their predators' predators. When a leaf is chewed on by a caterpillar, it can release a specific volatile compound that acts as an SOS signal. This signal, however, is not a general warning. It's a specific invitation to a parasitic wasp that preys on that particular type of caterpillar. The plant remembers the scent of its attacker and releases a chemical that specifically attracts its enemy's enemy. It's a sophisticated three-way biological interaction, a silent, chemical-based call for help, all based on a memory of who is attacking. This is a level of tactical planning that seems almost impossible for a brainless organism. Yet it is happening in fields and forests all over the world, a testament to the power of distributed intelligence. The very idea that a plant has a kind of memory bank of its attackers and their corresponding predators is a revolution in our understanding of nature. A curious detail of plant memory is its role in a plant's sense of time and the seasons. This is particularly important for flowering, Many plants, particularly those in temperate climates, require a period of cold before they can flower, a process known as vernalization. A young wheat plant, for instance, needs to remember that it has gone through winter before it can produce a head of grain in the spring. This memory is stored in its cells through the modification of a specific protein, which acts like a switch. The cold weather changes the state of the protein, and this change remains even after the temperatures warm up, signaling to the plant that winter has passed and it's safe to flower. It's a biological calendar, a memory of cold days that unlocks the promise of a warm spring. Without this memory, the plant would risk flowering too early, only to have its delicate flowers and fruits destroyed by a late frost. The ability to keep this cellular calendar is a fundamental survival mechanism, a silent promise to the future. But perhaps the most poetic and scientifically perplexing form of plant memory is seen in a plant's ability to recognize and respond to its own kind. In the intricate world of roots, plants can sense and remember the presence of their genetic relatives. When grown in a confined space like a small pot, a plant will often behave less competitively with its own kin, allocating resources and growing its roots in a more cooperative manner. With a stranger, however, it will grow its roots more aggressively, seeking to dominate the available space. How do they know who is who? They likely release specific chemical compounds from their roots that identify them as friend or foe. This isn't a conscious emotional recognition, but a primal chemical-based one. The existence of this behavior suggests a level of social awareness that challenges our traditional understanding of what it means to be a plant. The mechanisms are still the subject of intense research and debate. The very idea of kin recognition in a plant, a concept that implies a kind of social memory, is a profound piece of the puzzle. It suggests that a plant's sense of community is not just a random happenstance, but is rooted in a form of biological memory, a long-held record of its family tree. This is not about a plant caring for its siblings in a human sense, but about a deep evolutionary strategy to ensure the survival of its shared genes. It's a memory of belonging. Ultimately, plant memory is not about consciousness or a rich inner life. It's about efficiency and survival. It's a plant's quiet way of saying, "I've been here before. I know how to handle this." It's a reminder that intelligence and memory come in many forms, and that the profound, beautiful truths of biology often lie in the most unexpected of places. The next time you see a plant, don't think of it as a passive object. Think of it as a living archive, a keeper of quiet memories of past struggles and triumphs, written not in ink, but in the elegant language of its own cells. It is a testament to the idea that life itself is a form of memory, a continuous process of learning and adapting, held within a green and silent form. Let us now descend, leaving the world of sunlight and air for the silent, bustling metropolis beneath our feet. If you could shrink yourself down and slip into the soil, you would find yourself in a place that is anything but still. This is the realm of roots, and not just the roots of a single plant, but a vast interconnected society. Humming with life, filled with signals, trade routes, alliances, and even a bit of subterfuge. It's what some scientists have poetically dubbed the Wood Wide Web. Roots are more than just thirsty tentacles searching for water. They are the plant's foundation, both physically and biologically. They anchor the organism in place, absorb nutrients, and serve as a frontline sensory array, constantly tasting the soil and reporting back. But their most profound function may be their ability to interact with other roots microorganisms and fungi in the soil, in ways that begin to look an awful lot like social behavior. They are the silent architects of underground society, building connections and networks that sustain the entire ecosystem above. One of the most fascinating aspects of this underground world is the partnership between plants and fungi. Not just any fungi, mind you, but special ones that live in a deeply entwined relationship with plant roots. These are known as mycorrhizal fungi, and they form a mutualistic symbiosis, which in simpler terms means both parties benefit from the relationship. The fungi act as a massive extension of the plant's root system. Their delicate thread-like filaments, called hyphae, are far more efficient at reaching into tiny crevices in the soil than the plant's own roots. They can explore and exploit a much larger volume of soil, scavenging for nutrients that would otherwise be out of reach. In fact, a single gram of forest soil can contain miles of these fungal filaments. The fungi deliver hard-to-reach minerals, especially phosphorus and nitrogen, to the plant. In return, the plant pays them in the only currency it has: sugar or glucose produced through photosynthesis in its leaves and delivered down into the roots. It's a cozy long-term trade agreement, and it's incredibly common. In fact, a fun fact is that scientists estimate over 90% of all land plants, from tiny orchids to towering redwoods, engage in some form of mycorrhizal relationship. Without these hidden partners, the vast majority of terrestrial ecosystems simply wouldn't be able to thrive. The first land plants, which appeared over 400 million years ago, are believed to have established this very relationship with fungi, making it one of the oldest and most successful partnerships in biological history. This partnership forms the backbone of the Wood Wide Web, a vast underground communication and resource-sharing network that connects not just individual plants, but entire communities. Imagine a forest full of trees. Each one is a towering individual, but below ground their roots and fungal networks are intertwined, forming a shared system of information and nutrient transfer. If one tree is attacked by insects or begins to dry out from a drought, it may send warning signals through the fungal network. Nearby trees, upon receiving the alert, can prepare by boosting their own chemical defenses or closing their stomata to conserve water. This isn't telepathy, it's biology. A seminal study on Douglas fir trees in British Columbia by renowned ecologist Suzanne Simard provided some of the earliest and most compelling evidence of this. Her research showed that older mother trees were actively supporting young seedlings in the shady understory by transferring carbon in the form of sugar through the fungal network, allowing the saplings to survive and grow until they could reach the sunlight themselves. This act of interplant support has been observed in various ecosystems, from temperate forests to agricultural fields. It looks remarkably like a community looking out for its own. In some cases, this sharing goes beyond mere warnings. In nutrient-poor conditions, certain trees have been observed transferring sugars or nitrogen to other trees through these fungal connections. Sometimes the recipients are their own seedlings, which makes evolutionary sense. They're helping their genetic offspring survive. But other times, the generosity seems to extend to unrelated neighbors. Older established trees, often referred to as mother trees, have even been shown to support young saplings that are shaded and unable to photosynthesize efficiently on their own. These generous elders tend to be large, mature individuals with vast root and fungal networks that extend through the forest floor. The debate among academic circles about the motivation behind this behavior continues. Is it a form of pure altruism, or is it a pragmatic strategy to maintain the health and stability of the entire forest, which in turn benefits the mother tree? A healthy, stable forest is less susceptible to disease and pests, and a forest with a diverse range of age and species is more resilient. In this way, the mother tree is not just helping her own, but ensuring the long-term survival of the ecosystem she is a part of. This challenges the long-held view of plants as strictly self-interested loners, instead portraying them as key players in a complex cooperative society. Not all root interactions are so harmonious, though. The underground world is just as competitive as it is cooperative. Plants growing in close quarters often compete fiercely for space, water, and nutrients. Some will even release chemical compounds into the soil to inhibit the growth of nearby rivals, a process known as allelopathy. Black walnut trees are notorious for this. Their roots exude a compound called juglone, which is toxic to many other plant species. This gives the walnut tree a competitive edge by reducing the number of rivals that can grow nearby. It's a bit like throwing shade at your neighbors, but chemically. Even among kin, the level of cooperation can vary. While some plants seem to recognize their relatives and dial down their competitive behaviors, others ramp up the rivalry if resources are scarce. It's a complex dance of competition and cooperation, with the outcome shaped by context, species, and environmental conditions. Roots are also sensory organs in their own right. They can detect gradients of water nutrient concentrations, soil texture, pH levels, and even mechanical barriers like rocks or compacted earth. If you were to watch a root grow in time-lapse, you'd see it exploring, probing, pausing and redirecting almost like a curious worm, feeling its way forward. This process isn't random. Roots grow toward areas of higher nutrient content and water availability, and they avoid toxic or barren zones. As we mentioned in the last chapter, there's even evidence that roots can listen, growing toward the sound of running water, a kind of acoustic navigation that feels like a fairy tale, but is in fact a complex biological reality. The mechanism isn't fully understood, but it likely involves tiny mechanoreceptor cells that respond to pressure or movement distributed along the root surface. This ability to hear is a stunning example of how life adapts using whatever tools are available to navigate and thrive. Roots also play a central role in a plant's immune system. When a pathogen is detected in the soil, the roots can mount a defense response, releasing antimicrobial compounds, altering their growth patterns, or even calling in help from beneficial microbes. Some plants maintain symbiotic relationships, not only with fungi, but also with bacteria, which assist with nitrogen fixation or defense against disease. For example, in legumes like peas and beans, special structures called root nodules house nitrogen-fixing bacteria that convert atmospheric nitrogen into a form the plant can use. It's a tidy little factory underground, working full-time to keep the plant fed. In fact, a single plant can host a microscopic ecosystem on and within its roots, a complex community of bacteria, fungi, and other microbes that work together to keep the plant healthy and supplied with nutrients. This is the plant microbiome, and it is just as vital to a plant's health as the human gut microbiome is to ours. The plant uses chemical signals to cultivate this beneficial microbial community, actively shaping the world immediately around it. This kind of biological teamwork isn't just fascinating. It's essential for entire ecosystems. The health of a forest or a grassland often hinges on what's happening below the surface. If the root systems and their microbial partners are thriving, the plants above are more resilient to drought, disease, and environmental stress. But when these underground networks are disrupted by soil compaction, pollution, or deforestation, the entire ecosystem can falter. In agricultural settings, this understanding has led to a resurgence of interest in soil health. Farmers and gardeners are paying closer attention to how tilling, fertilizing, and pesticide use affect the underground world. Practices like crop rotation and reduced tillage help preserve root networks and support beneficial fungi and bacteria. In a way, it's a return to a more respectful partnership with the soil. Recognizing that what we do above ground echoes below, the complexity of these underground networks has even inspired new technologies. Scientists and engineers are studying root systems and fungal networks as models for decentralized systems like the internet architecture and robotics. After all, a network that can grow, adapt, reroute, and self-repair without any central control is a pretty compelling blueprint. Researchers are developing new bio-inspired sensors and communication networks based on the principles of the Wood Wide Web, aiming to create systems that are more resilient and resource efficient. But beyond the scientific implications, there's something quietly profound about knowing that under every forest path, garden bed, and city park, there's a living web of roots and fungi whispering to each other, passing notes, sharing meals, and occasionally engaging in a bit of strategic sabotage. It's a reminder that the world beneath our feet is just as alive and interconnected as the world we see above. So the next time you walk through a patch of grass or sit beneath a tree, remember you're standing on top of a vast invisible network of relationships, rooted in cooperation, rivalry, communication, and memory. It may be silent, it may be hidden, but it is never ever still. As we have seen, the silent world of plants is anything but unaware. Now let's expand our understanding of their sensory capabilities beyond the basic 5. Plants are in effect master environmental detectives, constantly monitoring a suite of conditions that are invisible to our own senses. They can feel the pull of gravity, taste the air, for chemicals gauge the moisture in the soil, and even sense the slightest changes in atmospheric pressure. Their entire bodies are a finely tuned array of sensors, allowing them to make critical decisions for survival in a world where they cannot move. They are silent sentinels, always on alert, gathering data from every angle of their existence. Let's begin with a sense that is fundamental to every living thing on Earth: gravity. This is called gravitropism. Every plant knows which way is up and which way is down without fail. A seed, no matter how it falls, will always send its root down into the earth and its shoot up towards the sun. It's a perfect, unwavering internal compass. So how do they do it? Inside the root tips and the growing shoots, specialized cells contain tiny, heavy starch grains called statoliths. These statoliths are like the tiny weights in a spirit level. As gravity pulls these grains to the bottom of the cells, they press against the cell membrane, triggering a cascade of hormonal signals, specifically a redistribution of auxins that tells the plant which way to grow. When you turn a potted plant on its side within a few hours, you can observe the tip of its stem beginning to bend back upwards. The statoliths have shifted, the signal has been sent, and the plant has made its slow, deliberate correction. It is a constant, quiet conversation with the very force that holds our universe together. The elegance of this system, its simplicity and perfection, is a profound piece of cosmic poetry. A plant has no brain, no concept of up or down, yet it knows with absolute certainty which direction to grow, an unshakable instinct encoded in its very cellular structure. This ability to sense gravity is not just a one-time event. It's a continuous dynamic process. A plant is constantly recalibrating its position in relation to gravity, ensuring that it remains upright and stable even as it grows and changes shape. Beyond gravity, plants are remarkably sensitive to temperature and moisture. A plant's ability to sense temperature isn't just about survival, it's about timing. Many species require specific temperature cues to initiate crucial life events, such as breaking dormancy or flowering. Some seeds, for example, will not germinate until they have experienced a prolonged period of cold, a process called stratification, which prevents them from sprouting in a false warm spell in the autumn, only to be killed by the coming winter. The plant's internal temperature sensors, which are thought to be proteins that change shape in response to heat or cold, provide a kind of molecular calendar, ensuring that the plant's life cycle is in perfect sync with the seasons. It's a quiet form of prophecy, a plant preparing for the future based on the subtle changes it senses in the air. This is why a late frost can be so devastating to fruit trees. The plant, having sensed the warmer temperatures of early spring, has already begun to bloom, leaving its delicate blossoms vulnerable. Similarly, a plant's ability to sense a coming temperature change allows it to prepare. For example, some trees can increase the sugar concentration in their sap in response to dropping temperatures, which acts as a kind of antifreeze, protecting their tissues from freezing solid. Similarly, a plant's sense of moisture is critical. Roots can detect gradients of water in the soil and will grow preferentially toward areas with higher moisture content, a process known as hydrotropism. This is a survival skill that is crucial for plants in arid environments. A single root tip can navigate a complex maze of dry and wet soil, making choices at every turn to follow the most viable path to a water source. Scientists have conducted fascinating experiments where they create a water maze for a root, a series of turns and choices that the root must make to find water. In these experiments, the root consistently finds the shortest path to the water, demonstrating a level of problem solving that goes beyond a simple random search. This is not just a passive response. It's an active directional growth, a silent subterranean quest. Some research even suggests that plants can sense changes in humidity and use this information to regulate their stomata, the tiny pores on their leaves. When the air becomes dry, the stomata will close to prevent water loss, a preemptive action based on the plant's atmospheric forecast. This is a level of environmental awareness that we, with all our technological tools, still struggle to replicate. But perhaps the most nuanced form of plant sensing is their ability to taste the air for chemicals. This is a topic we touched on in the last chapter, but its importance cannot be overstated. We're not talking about a taste in the traditional sense, but a sensitivity to airborne volatile organic compounds, VOCs. A plant can smell danger, whether it's a pest attack on a neighboring plant or the presence of a fungus. For example, when a plant is infected with a pathogen, it releases specific VOCs that can be detected by its neighbors, who can then prepare their own defenses. This is a form of chemical warning system, a silent alarm that travels on the wind. Some plants, like the wild tobacco plant, can even smell their own predators. When it's being eaten by a specific caterpillar, it releases a different set of chemicals that attract the caterpillar's natural enemies, such as parasitic wasps. It's a sophisticated chemical-based cry for help. This chemical taste also extends to a plant's social life. As a plant grows, it releases chemicals from its roots that can signal its identity to other plants. Some studies have shown that plants can differentiate between a kin, a genetic relative, and a non-kin, a stranger, based on these chemical signatures. When a plant senses the presence of a stranger, it will often grow its roots more competitively to acquire resources. But when it senses a relative, it will be less aggressive, suggesting a kind of chemical-based kin recognition. This is a level of social complexity that is stunning to consider. It's not about conscious emotion. It's about a deeply ingrained evolutionary strategy to ensure the survival of its genes, whether they are in its own body or in the body of a close relative. Beyond the well-known senses, plants are also sensitive to other more subtle stimuli. For instance, they can sense the pressure from a gust of wind, a falling raindrop, or even a simple touch. This thigmomorphogenesis, or the change in a plant's shape in response to mechanical stimulation, is a critical survival trait. A plant that is frequently buffeted by the wind will grow a shorter, sturdier stem and a more robust root system, making it more resilient to future storms. A seedling grown in a lab in a completely still environment, on the other hand, will often be tall and spindly, unable to withstand even a light breeze. This is a form of physical conditioning, a quiet, cellular-level conversation between the plant and its environment. In addition to wind and touch, plants can even respond to vibrations. We've already mentioned the incredible ability of roots to grow towards the sound of water. This ability is a testament to the plant's ability to extract meaningful information from even the most subtle of environmental cues. They can also sense the presence of certain metals and toxins in the soil, which allows them to alter their growth or even sequester the harmful substances, a process known as phytoremediation. The ability of plants to sense their environment is not just a passive process. It's an active, dynamic form of decision-making. Every second, every minute, a plant is gathering data from the world around it, processing that information, and making strategic choices about how to grow, where to put its resources, and how to defend itself. They are living instruments perfectly calibrated to their environment, and their quiet intelligence is a testament to the idea that life in all its forms is a form of knowing. They may not have eyes to see a sunrise, but they feel its warmth and know its rhythm. They may not have ears to hear a storm, but they feel its pressure change and prepare for its arrival. They are the ultimate environmental detectives, and their silent genius is all around us waiting to be appreciated. Just as we have seen that plants can sense their environment in ways we once thought impossible, they also have a profound and innate sense of time. This is not the time we measure with clocks and calendars, but an internal biological rhythm that governs their very existence. This is the world of circadian rhythms, a built-in timekeeper that allows plants to anticipate change, prepare for the future, and live in perfect harmony with the daily and seasonal cycles of the Earth. It is a silent cellular choreography that ensures every part of the plant is in sync with its surroundings. The term circadian comes from the Latin circadium, meaning around a day. These rhythms are not just a simple reaction to light and dark. They are a deeply ingrained, genetically encoded biological clock that runs on an approximately 24-hour cycle. Even when a plant is kept in a laboratory with constant light and temperature, its internal clock continues to tick, causing it to open and close its leaves, or engage in other rhythmic behaviors at roughly the same time each day. A famous historical example of this was a simple experiment conducted in 1729 by the French astronomer Jean-Jacques d'Ortu de Méran, who observed that a heliotrope plant continued to open and close its leaves in a daily cycle, even when kept in a dark closet. This was one of the first clues that a plant's sense of time was not dependent on the sun itself, but was an intrinsic internal function. This experiment, though simple, laid the groundwork for the modern field of chronobiology and forever changed our perception of plants from passive beings to active timekeepers. So what is the purpose of this internal clock? Why not just react to sunrise and sunset? The answer lies in the incredible advantage of anticipation. A plant that can anticipate the dawn is better prepared to photosynthesize the moment the sun's first rays hit its leaves. It can open its stomata, prepare its photosynthetic machinery, and start converting sunlight into energy right on schedule. This gives it a significant competitive edge over a plant that is merely reactive. Think of it as waking up 5 minutes before your alarm goes off. You're already ahead of the day. This anticipatory behavior is a cornerstone of plant survival. It allows them to optimize their metabolic processes, maximize their energy efficiency, and get a head start on the competition. In a forest where every sunbeam is a precious resource, this tiny advantage can be the difference between life and death. The plant's internal clock is a complex system of genes and proteins that interact in a feedback loop. Key genes, often referred to as clock genes, are turned on and off in a rhythmic cycle, and the proteins they produce regulate the expression of other genes throughout the plant's body. These genes act like tiny cogs in a molecular machine, and they are responsible for a wide range of daily rhythms. For example, the clock genes control the daily opening and closing of a plant's stomata. They also regulate the daily movement of leaves, a phenomenon known as nyctinasty, where leaves fold up at night and unfold in the morning. A fun fact is that some plants like the prayer plant Maranta leucanura are so famous for this rhythmic movement that their common name is derived from it. The discovery of these clock genes in the model plant Arabidopsis thaliana was a major breakthrough, revealing a sophisticated molecular mechanism that is conserved across many plant species. But a plant's sense of time extends far beyond the daily cycle. They also have a profound ability to sense the changing of the seasons. This is known as photoperiodism, the ability to measure the length of day and night. For a plant, the length of the night is often a more reliable signal than the length of the day. As the days grow shorter and the nights grow longer, a plant's photoreceptors, particularly phytochromes, track this change. This information is then passed to the plant's internal clock, which triggers a series of crucial seasonal events. For example, photoperiodism is what tells a deciduous tree when to stop growing, drop its leaves, and enter dormancy in preparation for winter. It's also what tells a flower when it's time to bloom. The classic example of this is the distinction between short-day plants and long-day plants. Short-day plants like chrysanthemums and poinsettias require a long, uninterrupted period of darkness to flower. As the nights grow longer in the fall, their internal clocks signal that it's time to bloom. Conversely, long-day plants like spinach and many grains need a short period of darkness to flower. They flower in the late spring and summer when the nights are short. The fascinating part of this is that the plant isn't measuring the amount of sunlight, but rather the length of the darkness. A flash of light in the middle of the night can completely disrupt a short-day plant's ability to flower, tricking it into thinking the night was short. This is why light pollution in urban areas can have a profound impact on the flowering and seasonal cycles of plants. The artificial light at night can prevent short-day plants from receiving the long period of darkness they need, confusing their internal clocks and preventing them from blooming. This phenomenon, which has a significant impact on urban ecosystems, is a testament to the finely tuned nature of a plant's sense of time. A plant's internal clock is not a perfect, unchangeable system. It is regularly reset or entrained by external cues, most notably the cycle of light and dark. This ensures that the plant's clock remains in sync with the real time of day. Without this entrainment, the internal clock would eventually drift out of sync, much like a poorly regulated watch. The plant's photoreceptors, such as the aforementioned phytochromes and cryptochromes, are responsible for receiving these external signals and adjusting the internal clock accordingly. It's a beautifully complex feedback loop, a constant conversation between the plant's internal sense of time and the external reality of the world. This ability to reset the clock is crucial for plants in environments where the day-night cycle may not be perfectly 24 hours. For example, in the far northern or southern latitudes, the length of the day changes dramatically throughout the year. The plant's clock must be able to adjust to these changes to remain in sync with the seasons. This mastery of time allows plants to engage in a wide range of sophisticated behaviors. Consider the careful choreography of a flower opening and closing. The evening primrose, for example, opens its blossoms at dusk to attract nocturnal pollinators like moths, while the sunflower turns its head to follow the sun throughout the day, a process we know as heliotropism. This solar tracking is also regulated by the plant's circadian rhythm. The plant anticipates the sun's movement and begins to turn its head even before the sun rises, ensuring it is perfectly positioned to capture the first rays of morning light. These are not random acts. They are timed to perfection, a testament to the plant's incredible sense of rhythm. Beyond the daily cycle, a plant's sense of time is a vital tool for its reproductive success. By knowing when to flower, a plant can ensure that its blossoms are ready when its specific pollinators are most active. A plant that flowers in the wrong season risks wasting all of its energy on a reproductive effort that will fail. Similarly, by knowing when to drop its leaves and enter dormancy, a tree can avoid being destroyed by the harsh conditions of winter. This is a survival strategy that has been refined over millions of years, a profound lesson in patience and preparation. This seasonal timing is not just about survival, it's also about a delicate ecological balance. A plant's flowering time must be in sync with its pollinators and its seed dispersal agents. If a plant flowers too early or too late, it may miss its window of opportunity for reproduction, which can have ripple effects throughout the entire ecosystem. The study of plant circadian rhythms and photoperiodism is still a vibrant and growing field. Researchers are uncovering more and more about the intricate molecular mechanisms that govern these processes. They are discovering that a plant's internal clock is not just a single centralized system, but a decentralized network of clocks in different cells and tissues, all working together in a quiet, synchronized dance. The root cells have their own clocks, as do the leaf cells, and they communicate with each other to ensure that the entire plant is operating on the same timeline. It's a beautifully complex system of distributed intelligence, a biological symphony where every cell knows its part and every action is timed to perfection. So the next time you see a plant, don't just see a still object. See a living clock, a silent timekeeper that is in perfect sync with the rhythms of the universe. See a being that knows when to rest, when to grow, and when to bloom, all without a single thought. It is a profound lesson in the wisdom of nature, a reminder that the deepest forms of intelligence do not require a brain, only a quiet, patient understanding of time itself. We have delved into the chemical languages and silent memories of plants. But what about something faster? Something that resembles our own nervous system. While plants lack neurons and synapses in the way animals do, they are far from inert when it comes to rapid communication. They have their own kind of electrical grid, a system of quick, long-distance signaling that allows them to respond to threats and changes with astonishing speed. This is a story of action potentials, voltage changes, and a hidden form of intelligence that challenges our every notion of what it means to be alive. The idea of electrical signaling in plants is not new. As far back as the 1870s, the great scientist Charles Darwin and his son Francis noted that certain plants like the Venus flytrap exhibited rapid movements that seemed to be triggered by some kind of signal. It wasn't until the 20th century, however, that technology allowed us to actually measure these signals. Scientists discovered that plants generate electrical impulses that are remarkably similar to the action potentials found in animal nerve cells. These signals travel through the plant's vascular tissue, the same xylem and phloem that transport water and nutrients. It's a kind of biological telegraph, a system for sending messages quickly from one part of the plant to another. One of the most dramatic examples of this electrical signaling is the Venus flytrap Dionea muscipula. The trap, which is a modified leaf, has tiny trigger hairs on its inner surface. When an unsuspecting insect touches one of these hairs, a tiny electrical charge is generated. A single touch is not enough to close the trap. The plant waits for a second touch, which must occur within a specific time window. This second touch generates a second electrical signal, and when the two signals add up, they trigger the trap to snap shut in less than a second. This clever mechanism prevents the plant from wasting energy by snapping shut in response to a single raindrop or a stray leaf. The plant is in effect counting the touches, a simple but profound form of memory and decision-making driven by electrical impulses. Another example can be seen in the Mimosa pudica, or sensitive plant, which we discussed in a previous chapter. When you touch its leaves, they fold up instantly, a reaction that travels from leaf to leaf in a chain reaction. This response is not just a chemical one. It's an electrical signal, an action potential, that spreads from the point of contact, telling the plant to fold its leaves. The signal travels along the plant's vascular tissue at a speed that is far too fast to be a simple hormonal or chemical diffusion. This rapid electrical transmission allows the plant to protect itself from predators or strong winds almost instantaneously. It's a silent scream of alarm, a flash of electricity that warns the entire plant of impending danger. A little-known fact is that this electrical signal is not just about physical touch. The mimosa can also respond to heat or even certain chemicals with the same electrical-based closing mechanism, demonstrating a versatility in its communication system that rivals some animal reflexes. So how do plants generate these electrical signals? The process is rooted in the movement of ions, particularly calcium ions, across cell membranes. A healthy plant cell maintains a careful balance of ions inside and out, creating a slight electrical charge or membrane potential. When a stimulus, a touch, a wound, or a chemical signal is received, it causes the ion channels in the cell membrane to open, allowing a rush of ions to flow in or out. This sudden change in voltage creates a wave of electrical activity that spreads from cell to cell. This is the plant's equivalent of an action potential, and it travels down the plant's vascular network, carrying a message from one part of the plant to another. The signals travel surprisingly fast at speeds of several centimeters per second, allowing a plant to communicate across its entire body in a matter of minutes. What kinds of messages do these electrical signals carry? We are only just beginning to understand the full scope of this electrical language, but we know it plays a vital role in several key processes. For one, these signals are involved in wound response. When a plant is cut or damaged, an electrical signal races from the wound site, alerting the rest of the plant to the injury. This can trigger a cascade of defensive responses, such as the production of hormones that promote healing or the synthesis of toxins that deter future attacks. It's a kind of biological first aid alert, a silent but immediate notification that something is wrong. In a fascinating study on potato plants, scientists found that a wound to a single leaf triggered a systemic electrical signal that traveled to the other leaves, causing them to ramp up their defenses, even if they had not been damaged themselves. This is a level of coordination and foresight that is truly remarkable. Beyond defense, electrical signals also seem to play a role in regulating photosynthesis. Recent studies have shown that voltage changes can travel from the leaves to the roots, signaling the plant's photosynthetic activity. This allows the roots to adjust their nutrient uptake in sync with the energy production in the leaves. It's a masterful system of resource management, a constant conversation between the plant's energy factory, the leaves, and its supply chain. The roots all managed by electricity. The plant's ability to coordinate these two distant parts of its body so efficiently is a testament to the power of this electrical communication. This also works in the opposite direction. For example, when a plant's roots sense a lack of water, they can send an electrical signal up to the leaves, prompting them to close their stomata to conserve water. It is a rapid systemic response to an environmental challenge, bypassing the slower, more leisurely pace of hormonal signals. Another fascinating line of research involves the use of electrical signals for communication with other organisms. Some scientists have speculated that plants might use these signals to communicate with the mycorrhizal fungi in the soil. While the evidence is still in its early stages, it's a tantalizing idea that the electrical grid of a plant could be connected to the vast fungal network below ground, creating a kind of bioelectrical internet that connects the entire forest. This would explain how a mother tree can send signals to its seedlings and how plants can warn each other of danger so quickly. The electrical signals could act as a rapid conduit for information, complementing the slower but more detailed chemical messages that are also being sent through the network. This fusion of electrical and chemical communication creates a sophisticated, multi-layered system that is far more complex than we ever imagined. The discovery of a plant's electrical grid challenges our conventional understanding of intelligence and life itself. We have long defined intelligence by the presence of a brain and a nervous system. But if a plant can sense, remember, and make decisions in real time using electrical signals, then perhaps our definition is too narrow. It forces us to ask, is this a form of cognition? Is it a kind of consciousness? The answers are, of course, a matter of intense philosophical and scientific debate. What is clear, however, is that plants are far more dynamic and sophisticated than we ever imagined. They are not just passive green statues. They are living, thinking, communicating beings that operate on a different scale and in a different dimension than we do. Their nervous system is not a network of neurons, but a silent electric web that pulses with information, a quiet symphony of life that we are only just beginning to hear. So the next time you see a plant, remember that beneath its still exterior, there is a constant hum of electrical activity, a silent language that connects its leaves to its roots and its past to its future. It is a powerful reminder that life in all its forms is wired to know and to adapt. We have journeyed through the intricate world of plant senses, their chemical communication, silent memories, and even their own electrical grid. Now, we arrive at the most profound and challenging question of all: can plants think? Do they possess a form of intelligence or even consciousness? This is not a question with a simple answer, but one that forces us to re-examine our very definition of what it means to be a thinking being. For a long time, the answer was a resounding no. We have long defined intelligence by the presence of a central nervous system and a brain. Our own intelligence is so tied to our neurons and synapses that it is difficult to imagine a form of cognition that doesn't rely on them. But as we have seen throughout this exploration, plants have developed sophisticated solutions to complex problems. They learn, remember, communicate, and make decisions all without a brain. This is what some scientists and philosophers call distributed intelligence, a form of smarts that is not centralized but spread throughout the entire organism, with each cell playing a small part in a larger collective decision. It is a form of decentralized autonomous problem solving, a kind of wisdom of the crowd embodied in a single green organism. Let's revisit some of the evidence. A Venus flytrap, by counting, touches and deciding when to close, is performing a simple calculation and a risk assessment. A plant that remembers a drought and prepares for the next one is demonstrating a form of memory and foresight. A vine that remembers the location of a support after a brief touch is showing a form of spatial awareness. These are not just programmed reflexes, they are active, adaptive responses to a changing environment. The plant is in a way solving a problem. If that isn't a form of intelligence, what is? The plant's ability to optimize its behavior for survival and efficiency, a process known as optimization, is a hallmark of intelligent systems, whether they are biological or artificial. However, most scientists would caution against anthropomorphizing these behaviors. They would argue that a plant's decisions are not conscious choices, but rather a series of finely tuned, evolved responses. When a root grows toward water, it is not thinking about where to go. It is responding to a chemical and moisture gradient, a simple but effective biofeedback loop. This is a crucial distinction. We are not talking about a plant having thoughts or feelings in the way a human or a dog does. We are talking about a form of knowing that is entirely alien to our own, one that is rooted in chemistry, electricity, and the slow, deliberate rhythm of life itself. The philosophical debate often centers on a concept called qualia, the subjective felt quality of experience. Can a plant have qualia? Can it feel what it's like to be a plant? The answer for now is beyond our ability to know. But what about the concept of plant consciousness? This is an even more difficult question. Consciousness is, by our very definition, a subjective internal experience. We can't know what it's like to be a plant, just as we can't know what it's like to be a bat. But if we expand our definition of consciousness to include something more fundamental, a basic awareness of one's own existence and environment, then the conversation becomes more interesting. Could a plant have a simple nonverbal awareness of its place in the world? Could its electrical and chemical signals be a form of silent internal monologue? There is no scientific evidence to support this idea, but it is a question that, when asked, changes the way we look at the green world around us. It's a kind of cosmic thought experiment, a way of stretching our minds to consider forms of life and cognition that don't fit into our neat little boxes. Philosophically, the consciousness question forces us to confront our own biases. We have long viewed plants as objects, as inert, passive things here for our consumption. But if they are in fact sophisticated, intelligent, and communicative beings, then our relationship with them must change. The act of eating a carrot or cutting down a tree takes on a new layer of ethical complexity. This is not to say that we should treat a plant with the same moral consideration as a human, but it does suggest that a little more respect and appreciation for the silent, hidden world of plants is warranted. The German philosopher Immanuel Kant famously argued that we should only grant moral consideration to rational beings. But what if rationality is not a single human-centric concept? What if it exists in a distributed, decentralized form in the plant world? This is where the work of scientists like Stefano Mancuso, a leading figure in plant neurobiology, becomes so important. He and others are pushing the boundaries of our understanding, proposing that we should look at plants not as organisms, but as superorganisms, a collective of cells and systems that work together to achieve a kind of collective intelligence. So, where do we go from here? The conversation about plant intelligence is still in its infancy, a vibrant and debated field. Scientists are developing new tools and technologies to listen to a plant's chemical whispers and electrical hums to understand its apathetic life and its distributed brain. They are discovering that the intelligence of a plant may lie not in a single centralized organ, but in a vast, decentralized network that connects its leaves roots and even its neighboring plants. This network, as we've seen, is a complex tapestry of chemical and electrical signals, a living internet that governs every aspect of the plant's life. Perhaps the most valuable lesson is not about what plants can do, but what they teach us about ourselves. They show us that intelligence does not have to be fast, loud, or self-aware. It can be slow, quiet, and profoundly patient. It can be a deep, elegant wisdom that is not about knowing oneself, but about knowing one's place in the world. They are a living testament to the idea that life in all its forms is a form of knowing, a kind of silent genius that is all around us waiting to be appreciated. The plant's knowledge is not a library of facts, but a deeply practical wisdom, a silent internal guide to survival. It knows when to grow, when to rest, when to defend, and when to cooperate, all without a single thought. It is a profound lesson in the wisdom of nature, a reminder that the deepest forms of intelligence do not require a brain, only a quiet, patient understanding of time itself. So the next time you see a tree or flower, don't just see a passive green thing. See a living being that is listening, remembering, and communicating in a language you are only just beginning to understand. And in that quiet moment of appreciation, you may find a new kind of respect for the silent world around us. We have reached the end of our journey. We began by asking a simple question. What if plants aren't as passive as we think? And in our quiet exploration, we have uncovered a hidden world of senses, communication, memory, and rhythm. We have seen that a plant is a masterful environmental detective, a silent timekeeper, a living electrical grid, and a decentralized genius. We have challenged our own assumptions, and in doing so, have learned something profound, not just about plants, but about ourselves and the very nature of life. This final chapter is not a summary of the science, but a meditation on its meaning. It is an invitation to look at the green world with a new set of eyes, to see not just what is visible, but what is hidden, to hear not just what is loud, but what is silent. The last word, however, does not belong to the author or the scientist. It belongs to the plant itself. It is a word whispered on the wind, etched in the rings of a tree, and hidden in the delicate spirals of a fern. It is a word that reminds us that intelligence does not require a brain, and consciousness does not require a voice. It is a word that invites us to slow down, to listen, and to look at the world with a new sense of wonder. The plant's final message is one of profound simplicity and elegant complexity. It tells us that life in all its forms is a constant act of knowing and adapting. It shows us that survival is not just about competition, but also about cooperation, a quiet, cellular form of community. So as you walk out into the world, look at a tree. Don't just see a trunk and branches. See a being that is feeling the gravity of the earth, a quiet giant that is remembering a century of seasons, a living archive of past droughts and storms, triumphs and struggles. Look at its leaves. Don't just see green. See the masterful architecture of a solar-powered factory, a communication center that is sending electrical signals and chemical whispers to the entire community. See a marvel of engineering that can convert sunlight into sugar water, into life, and carbon dioxide into the air we breathe. Look at the soil beneath it. Don't just see dirt. See a vast, interconnected internet of roots and fungi, a living web of cooperation and rivalry, a silent society that is humming with life. See the mycorrhizal filaments that connect trees to each other, a biological network that rivals the internet in its complexity and elegance. This is the Wood Wide Web, a silent testament to the idea that no organism, not even a mighty tree, lives alone. The genius of a plant is not in its speed or its power, but in its patience and its profound interconnectedness. It is a life form that knows with an absolute certainty that we can only envy that it is a part of something much larger than itself. It is a life form that has mastered the art of being, of simply existing in perfect harmony with the universe. And in that quiet existence, it has a lot to teach us. It reminds us that we are not separate from nature, but a part of it. It reminds us that our own lives are governed by rhythms we are only just beginning to understand. It reminds us that there is a deep, elegant wisdom in simply being still and listening to the world. A plant doesn't panic. It doesn't rush. It simply responds with a quiet confidence that is rooted in millions of years of evolution. It is a powerful lesson in mindfulness, a living example of how to live in the present moment, fully aware of every change in the environment, without the distraction of a cluttered mind. Philosophically, this journey challenges our very concept of personhood. We have long assumed that a person must have a brain, a conscious mind, and the ability to move freely. But what if we are wrong? What if life in its most fundamental form is not about freedom of movement, but about the profound ability to adapt and to know one's place? This is not to say that we should treat a plant with the same ethical consideration as a human. That is a complex and nuanced debate, but it does suggest that the old dichotomies, animal versus plant conscious versus non-conscious intelligent versus unintelligent, are far too simplistic. The plant world invites us to embrace a more fluid and expansive understanding of life, one that celebrates diversity in all its forms, from the fastest gazelle to the slowest tree. In our loud, fast-paced world, the quiet intelligence of plants is a powerful and necessary counterpoint. They show us that there is wisdom in silence, strength in stillness, and a profound form of knowing that is not based on thought or language. They are living instruments perfectly calibrated to their environment, and their quiet genius is all around us waiting to be appreciated. They are a constant reminder that the world is a complex, interconnected tapestry of life, and that every single thread, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, has a role to play. So let this be the last word. The next time you see a plant, don't just see a passive thing. See a living being that is listening, remembering and communicating in a language you are only just beginning to understand. See a quiet hero, a silent teacher, a masterpiece of evolution. And in that quiet moment of appreciation, you may find that the biggest mystery of all is not the life of a plant, but the life that you yourself are living.